Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Thompson Today. I'm joined today by Wab Kinew, running to be the leader of the Provincial New Democrats. Now let's start things off by getting to know you a bit better. I did my research before coming into this interview, so I have an idea of who you are and what you stand for, but all the listeners might not. Could you maybe give us a brief synopsis of your background?
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me. It's good to be here in Thompson. I was born in Kenora, Ontario, and grew up on a reserve about an hour south of there called Onigaming. Then moved to Winnipeg for school and did my school in there, graduated, went to University of Manitoba, got a degree in economics. And then in the years since, I've worked as a broadcaster, first on radio and then TV. And then worked in the university industry, helped to run the University of Winnipeg, and wrote a book. And then have recently found my way into politics. So when I was a little kid on the reserve, I wasn't thinking about being a broadcaster, author, politician, but it's been a pretty awesome journey nonetheless.
I think you're leaving out hip-hop artists.
That's right, yeah. Well. Music, yeah. So there's lots, yeah.
So as you just said, you've made the transition now into politics. What made you want to get involved in politics, specifically with the NDP?
Well, it's all about public service for me. My dad was a First Nations politician back in the day, and my mom worked on the policy side. And I saw both of them conduct themselves with integrity and with honesty and to serve our communities and make things better at a time when things were very challenging. And now that I have an opportunity, I've been given lots of opportunity in life to get educated, to have a good career. I want to help others have the same chances that I did. And so as a result, I just decided to, jump in with both feet. And specifically, I wanted to join the NDP because I've seen in my own family the difference that New Democrats can make for people. Back in the 80s, my wife's family, they were able to lift themselves out of poverty living in inner city Winnipeg because of an NDP program that allowed people on social assistance to get tuition paid for. And so my mother-in-law got educated and then, raised her kids, and my wife became a medical doctor, and so it completely transformed their family for the better. And leading into the last election, I knew things were going to be tough for the NDP. It was a difficult election, and I figured, that's the most important time to stand up for your values, is when times are tough. And so I decided to join the NDP slate of candidates and to run and to try and help the party. And I was lucky to be elected, and it's been an honor to serve in opposition so far. But now I want to be part of rebuilding the team and to hold Pallister to account and to rebuild the party so that we can help more people get the same opportunity that my mother-in-law had back in the 80s to improve their lives for the better, whether they're in the North, whether they're on a First Nation, whether they're in Winnipeg. You
kind of hinted at it a bit. Moving more into the leadership race now, why do you want to be the leader of the Manitoba NDP?
Well, my mother-in-law's name is Debbie, and I want to help make sure that there's thousands, tens of thousands of more Debbies in the province. Make sure whether you're the son or daughter of a miner or the son or daughter of a surgeon, that you get the same opportunity in this province. And that's what it's really about for me. It's about ensuring that there's opportunity for everybody, that there's good jobs for people during their working years, and that we have a strong healthcare system when people get sick or they get injured. And so those are some of my big motivations. And right now, I think it's more than just trying to make the world a better place. I actually really disagree with a lot of the direction that the current government is taking, particularly cutting the healthcare system. I think that that's wrong. And so I think it's not just about rebuilding the New Democratic Party. It's also about helping Manitobans, because I think Manitobans are starting to be impacted by these cuts, and so we owe it to the people of this province to rebuild our team and to put forward a real alternative in the next election so that Manitobans have a choice that they can make.
You're running against Steve Ashton. Mm-hmm. He's a long-time MLA who's been serving not only in the NDP but also us here in Thompson for over 30 years. How do you plan on trying to sway and reach the voters, especially here in Thompson and in the North? You basically have to say, look, I know I'm new, and I know he's been around a while, but you should vote for me. How are you going to do that?
Well, I think that people in our party want renewal, and I think that I embody that. I'm somebody who Technically speaking, I'm a millennial. I'm like on the old end of that millennial generation, but I just kind of squeak in there. But at the same time, I have had an opportunity to work in a lot of different fields and to get a lot of real world experience. So I think I bring the right kind of experience to the table while also bringing in the new ideas and the new direction that the NDP needs right now. And when I talk to people in areas like Thompson, where we need to win back seats in order to form government again, what I hear is that people say, well, we sent your party a message in the last election, and have you heard the message? And so to me, it's about taking the time to show up in communities like Thompson and to listen to people and to take those ideas forward and trying to inform first the leadership campaign, but also, if I'm successful in winning this, then into the next election.
There are two big issues provincially that are constantly in the media. I know being in the media, I constantly have to be talking about them because that's what's news. Let's talk about the one that affects us here in the north first, and that's the Port of Churchill and Omnitracks and the rail line. What would you do if elected leader of the party and then possibly down the line as premier of the province to change the situation? I know Nikki Ashton, our MP, the drum she's constantly banging is to saying that it needs to be renationalized.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the privatization of it has caused the problems that we're seeing today. And we know that, that's part of the Liberal agenda and part of the Conservative agenda to privatize public assets. And now the people of Churchill and the people who live along the rail line and depend on it for the necessities are the ones paying the price for those past decisions. So, we need to avoid making those mistakes again. The best option that I've seen on the table to me is working with the First Nations communities. There are 2 First Nations consortiums that are interested in buying the rail line. And I think if we can work with them to come up with a deal that also serves the non-First Nations communities along the rail line, including the town of Churchill, then I think that's the best way forward. I would see, if I'm successful in winning this race and becoming the next leader of the opposition, first of all, we have to make sure that the Pallister government acts to, serve the people of Churchill, make sure that food and fuel is affordable in the community. But if I had the opportunity to call the shots right now, I would be working at, trying to ensure that one of these consortiums can buy the rail line, because local northern ownership, to me, is the best way forward for the line long term. And then the other consideration, which I haven't heard a ton about in the media, is that not only is there an urgency to serve the people in Churchill, but also there's an urgency because there's potentially other ports in the north that could be opened up in the future. I know I was hearing a presentation from a mine in Nunavut, and they were considering building their own port as part of this mining development. So if that happens, then potentially Churchill gets even hit harder in the future by losing out on the opportunity to transport some of those minerals. So time is really of the essence, and it's a super important issue to me.
Now, the other situation that's constantly being talked about, and you mentioned it a bit earlier, is the healthcare system here in the province and the cuts that are happening. I know I talked to our MLA here in Thompson, Kelly Bindle, quite a bit, and he said that cuts are being made because of the previous NDP government and saying that they set up a system that just didn't work. What would you do to improve this system here in Manitoba?
Well, first of all, that's just false. We know that it's Brian Pallister and Kelly Bindle and the Progressive Conservatives who are making these healthcare cuts. So they can stop trying to blame other people and stop trying to pass the buck, because it's clearly the people in power right now who are ordering emergency rooms to be closed, who are ordering rural EMS stations to be closed, who are slashing supports for patients who need to travel for medical appointments, and incentives to bring doctors into rural and remote communities. Those are all decisions made by the Progressive Conservative government. And I don't remember them talking about that during the last election campaign. And I'm pretty sure that Manitobans wouldn't have voted for them had they laid out this plan during the last election. That said, there are challenges in the healthcare system. Particularly if we look in the north, we know that the baby boomer generation is aging, and they'll require more healthcare as they get older. And we also know that there's a lot of people with complex medical needs, like diabetes, renal health, kidney disease and dialysis, things like that. So we do need to reorient the healthcare system. And my proposal, what I'm running on doing, is to refocus healthcare on prevention and to move earlier on into people's lives to keep them healthy at home as much as possible. So one, that means investing in primary prevention. So things like ensuring that people have good diet and exercise and that they have the sort of mobility aids that they need so that they can move around their homes without injuring themselves. Like I'm thinking of a senior, giving them the tools so that they don't have a bad fall while they're at home. Two, it's mental health supports, both in terms of offering psychological services to people, but also addictions treatment, particularly with the prescription drugs that really have become an epidemic. And then three, it's about expanding pharmacare so that people get the drug coverage that they need so that they can be healthy. Because right now, somebody can go to the doctor for free, but then the doctor might write them a prescription that costs $200. Then the person doesn't take it because they don't have the money, and then they have to go to the emergency room, which is the most expensive way to deliver care. So if we do those three things around prevention, pharmacare, and mental health, then we can reinvest the money that we're saving in the acute care services, like an emergency room or an urgent care center or a clinic. And to me, that's the best way to focus the healthcare system and to meet the needs of the future, is by investing in prevention and keeping people healthy at home.
Now, we talked about this earlier when you were talking about your background. You were a journalist for a while, and one of the things you did while at the CBC was the Eighth Fire series. And I have to say, I watched some of it on YouTube. There's only, I think, the first episode available there. So I watched that, and I have to say, I learned things that I didn't know before, which I think is something you were trying to do, is to teach people, because there's a lack in the education system and there's a gap in knowledge, especially when it comes to relations between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples, the residential school, back to treaties, and everything to do with that relationship. Now, if you were elected the party leader and the NDP were to win the next election, you could literally have the chance to change the history books and change the education in the schools here in the province. Is that something that would be an important issue for you?
Yeah. First of all, let me say that while I am a First Nations man, I want to be a leader for everybody. I want to lead for all people and to bring opportunity for everyone's kids, not just my own. I do think that the education system needs to adapt, and I think teachers are doing a great job of implementing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations about Indigenous issues. So definitely I want to support that work to continue. But I also think that there's broader challenges in education too, particularly around jobs, and how are we going to make sure that young people who are going to school today are going to have the skills that they need to work in the jobs of tomorrow and to be able to compete. There's a saying right now that a lot of the jobs that we're preparing young people for won't exist in 20 years, and many of the jobs that young people are going to work in 20 years from now don't even exist yet. So we're talking about technology change, basically, and that's going to affect the big industries in our province, from mining to transportation to agriculture and on down the list. So I think that we also need to ensure that the education system is teaching young people those real practical skills as early on as possible, even in elementary school, teaching them how to work with technology and, just sending the message, computers, that's not just for the smart kids anymore. Like we kind of have too often thought of that in almost a snobby kind of way. But we need to know that everyone has to learn those skills and be given the opportunity to succeed, because that's, working with technology, that's just the name of the game in the working world today. So specifically around, some of the issues I've worked on in the past, I want to keep pushing forward on them. But for me, big picture, it's about jobs and ensuring that people can compete in the economy of tomorrow.
What is your vision for the North, specifically here in Thompson, since that's where we are right now? It's clear there are social and economic issues throughout the city, whether it's a homeless shelter here downtown that's turning people away in the winter and having to use overflow facilities at the outdoor rinks, or whether it's the 700 jobs that we'll be losing because of valet within the next year. So what's your vision for here in the North?
Well, I think the first thing is you need representatives who show up and who work with people in the community, particularly when there's crises like, say, the birch tree closure or the rail line, as we discussed already. And then, hopefully those politicians show up in the good times as well and help people celebrate. So it's been important for me, even though I represent Fort Rouge, which is in the city of Winnipeg. I've been engaged. When we heard about the closure a little while back, I was on the phone with the steel workers right away and trying to get an idea of what their asks were and what they're trying to see happen. And I think first and foremost, we want to fight for the jobs, right? And that's something that I'm committed to, protecting jobs, creating more jobs in the future in the North. To me, those are major priorities. And in those instances where there are going to be people put out of work, then I think we need to look at retraining and being able to give people an opportunity to transition to a new career. And the reason why jobs are so important to me is the paycheck does matter. The wages are super important because that's how you provide for your family. That's how you provide for your kids. But also, there's more than just the paycheck too. When you have a job, it provides a sense of discipline, a sense of self-worth. It gives you some value, and that's really important to people. And so we have to fight for people's dignity in addition to making sure that they can earn a good living. And so that's going to be a big part of the future. Thompson in particular, the future is going to be tied with the mining industry. There are other opportunities around cold weather testing for some technologies, so perhaps we can bring in new research and innovation opportunities to create new jobs in those spaces. And it's often said that Thompson's the hub of the North for healthcare and other services, and so we need to ensure that those services are provided in a very strong way here, so that people working in healthcare and other industries have a good job here, and that the people traveling in from surrounding areas can access what they need here. So I do think a big part of it is about investing, and what people have been telling me is that while tourism is good, tourism is not going to be enough. We need industries, we need real investments in the North to ensure the long-term viability of a city like Thompson.
Finally, to wrap things up, it's an exciting time to be a New Democrat in the province and in the country. There's both leadership races going on. How closely have you followed the federal NDP leadership race? And is there any candidate you're more leaning towards or you think would have a better view for Canada?
Well, I think we're really lucky with the federal race going on that there's a lot of good candidates running. There's 4 great candidates, so I don't think you can choose wrong if you're watching that race. I'm sure there's a lot of hometown fans here for Nikki Ashton, and I think she's done really well so far. She's kind of came out with a bang and made a strong impression since her launch, and she seems to have been doing really well, both in terms of the media attention and also in terms of the polling numbers that we've seen. But at this point, I'm so busy with traveling around the province. We're here in Thompson today. We're in Dauphin and Souris yesterday. I'm more focused on the provincial campaign right now, so I'll hopefully get this thing to the finish line, and then I'll make up my mind as to the federal thing a little bit later on.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Wab.
All right, thank you so much.
For Thompson Today here on 102.9 CHTM, I'm Stuart Walter.